My name is Mr. West, and I am here to speak to you about the science fiction literature course, which is a semester long course. And this happens to actually be its maiden voyage. So, thank you so much for joining me. On the screen now is a general overview of the class. Essentially, what it says is that we'll be specifically looking at science fiction and the ideas and themes common to science fiction as the content for typical English class objectives such as analytical, argumentative, research writing, analyzing texts through rhetorical analysis or through literary analysis. Ultimately, I want for them to be working on reading and writing skills while also considering a very rich genre that is invested in looking at the hopes, fears, desires of the world we currently live in through the fantastic or the wondrous. I'm going to go through the scope and sequence. I'm going to try and be quick. Essentially, because of the situation we find ourselves in, we didn't jump in with what I would have hoped we would be jumping in with, kind of straight into some science fiction stuff. But instead, we kind of got the ball rolling with becoming familiar with the learning environment and trying to support students' needs and also having them take a look at, what's next for them as a way of sort of taking a look at some personal narrative ideas that are going to culminate in the writing of personal statements. Some of them will be using those to apply to college, some of them will not, but most students will be going on to some form of higher learning after this, and they will also need to do some amount of personal writing, for financial aid and the like. So beyond the distance learning and personal statements, we're also going to be, going into issues of science fiction. So what is science fiction? We'll be exploring, what are the characteristics of science fiction? What makes a story science fiction as opposed to fantasy or speculative fiction? And actually, the characteristics are maybe not what you would expect. Maybe it's more. Anyway, then we're going to be going into the eras of science fiction. This class is not going to be strictly like a survey of like the, chronologically from the various eras, but we will look at them because all of the text will be spanned across the eras of science fiction, and we will be using that as a means by which to look at how people have used science fiction to tell a variety of kinds of stories. Like, for example, proto science fiction, which is stuff from the 1900s. So, 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of the very early science fiction novels before the term science fiction was invented. And then we'll go into pulp science fiction, and this is when science fiction really came into the public consciousness in the 1930s through the 1950s. There were tons of magazines with short stories in them. What commonly became known as science fiction, and in a large part why science fiction was frequently not taken very seriously as a form of literature. The next era is called the golden age of science fiction, and this is where it sort of matures a bit and becomes more respectable. And as you can see there, I've got Asimov's I, Robot, which is one of the classics, and he is part of the sort of triumvirate of golden era greats, which is Asimov, Heinlein, and Arthur C. Clarke. But science fiction becomes a little more serious through the golden age. And then, unlike the golden age, the next is the new wave, in which sort of the rules of science fiction get broken, and the types of stories that are told become more varied and have more nuance and have more than one point of view. And the text there is by Delaney, whose 1967's The Einstein Intersection is a great example of a new wave science fiction text. And then next we have the 1990s, when science fiction goes even beyond the new wave and further breaks conventions and kind of goes both high tech but sort of low culture. Sort of William Gibson's Neuromancer is widely considered the first cyberpunk book. He actually coined the phrase cyberspace. And so, the world does not necessarily look any better, but technology is advanced. So it's both sort of high and low. The current era that we are in, which sort of defies a singular name, but we'll be looking at science fiction from the new millennium as well. And then beyond this, we'll be looking at themes, common themes in science fiction, and then we'll be looking at these themes throughout all of the eras. So one of them is, you may recognize this GIF. It's from the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man. If you don't know it, I recommend you check it out. It's pretty fun. But anyway, this would be First Contact, aliens coming to visit us. And then another form of common theme is sort of, again, aliens, but this one is they're sort of being colonized, being taken over by an alien people. And in this case, it's the Cold War era's invasion of the body snatchers, which arguably was a metaphor for communism within the US. And then we go from there to taking a look at how Earth, if we've had a ton of stories of where we are going out and seeking out new worlds and new life and new civilizations. And so I have an example here of Avatar, which essentially is humanity goes to another planet and plans to use its natural resources and is in conflict with the people that live there already. We will not be reading Avatar, but there are stories that are similar to this kind of thing. And then additionally, we'll be looking at what it means to be human and artificial intelligence. Blade Runner is actually a text I may use, I plan to use in conjunction with Frankenstein. Actually, there are really interesting and fascinating parallels between Frankenstein and Blade Runner. But in Blade Runner, essentially, there are replicants, and replicants are machines that are self-aware. They have an artificial intelligence, and AI is a big thing right now. So we'll be looking at a variety of stories that investigate the fears and dreams of AI. And then one more theme we'll be looking at, a common concern and anxiety that we have is about the climate and disaster of our climate, or post apocalyptic fears of a variety of ways in which it happens. And so, but we will be looking at some short stories that touch on environmental concerns. And then finally, we'll be taking a look at a novel. I'm not sure which novel. Once again, I don't, the students can't get physical books or have difficulty doing so. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm considering teaching a book called The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, written in the 1990s, but remarkably relevant for today, particularly with regard to issues related to climate change. But it's not merely that, it covers other relevant current topics as well. I will be notifying the students' families if I go that direction, because I will have to ask permission to do so. And then the other text I'm considering is The Story of Your Life, which is a novella from Ted Chiang. It is the story that the movie Arrival is based off of. And while I do believe Arrival's a good movie, I really enjoyed it. The Ted Chiang novella is, I think, pretty special and kind of, I don't know. It'll be a challenging text for students, but I hope and believe that it would be worthwhile. All right. So beyond scope and sequence, assignments are posted in Classroom. They are also in Synergy. Like once I create it in the Google Classroom, it'll be in Synergy. There are two types of grades. There are summative assessments, which are 60% of the grade, and that's essays, final writing assignments, presentations, tests, anything that is supposed to be the demonstration of their understanding and mastery of what we have done in the unit. The rest, and the majority of assignments, are actually formative. Essentially, they're like check-in. So the completion of classwork, completion of quizzes, adequate participation and completion of assignments when they work as groups, completion of homeworks, standard stuff, right? So the the grades are weighted. The higher percentage given to the fewer assignments that are the representative culminating assignments, and summative, I believe, is significant because that's where they demonstrate what they've learned. The 40% is a lot because I want to honor the work they put into class and doing the ongoing assignments that hopefully build them towards mastery in the summative assessments. Finally, I will happily give you my mobile number should you wish it, but how about you send me an email first, westg@sfusd.edu. If you have any questions about anything I've gone over here, please let me know. I look forward to speaking with anyone interested in talking about the class or how I might better serve your student. Thank you for your time and live long and prosper.